Okay, I think we'll start. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Brook Green Supply's Energy Market webinar. So today we've got a number of our best from Brook Green to talk you through all of the updates in what's quite a fast-moving industry at the moment. So to introduce myself, I'm Wesley Scott. I head up the Industrial Sales and Solutions team here at Brook Green. I appreciate there's probably a number of people on the call who know who Brook Green are, but also a number of people who don't know who Brook Green are. As a business, we're only 9 years old, so it's our 10th birthday next year. Up until probably 18 months ago, we didn't really have a marketing department. So we're a very large business now. We're the seventh biggest electricity supplier and sixth biggest gas supplier in the country. But we're not necessarily a household name. So yeah, we supply across both electricity and gas in the business sector. We'll cover off that in a minute. So important updates. At the end of this, we'll do a Q&A. You should see a panel where you can submit questions as we're talking. And then we'll approach that at the end. There'll also just be a quick poll. If you could provide feedback, that would be great. Okay, moving on. So just in terms of agenda, so I'll do a quick intro. Then we've got John Severn, who will talk through gas and power. I'll let John introduce himself in a minute. And then we've got Harry Hailwood, who heads up our policy and regs team, who will do both non-commodities, which has quite a few updates at the moment, and policy and regulation in general. And then we'll move on to a quick Q&A at the end. Cool. So Brook Green, here we are. So like I said, we supply electricity and gas to industrial and commercial users. We do a lot more than just electricity and gas. We supply REGOs, PPAs, RGGOs, and a range of decarbonisation solutions on the downstream side. We've also been working quite hard over the past few years to build up our PPA proposition, and we're working with generators on the trading desk side, both on the upstream as well. So if you've got any questions after this on either, I guess, downstream or both upstream, you can reach out to anyone on this call, and we'll provide a bit more information and recording to this webinar afterwards, so you can go through channels in that way as well. Okay, moving swiftly on. John.
Good to see you all. I'm John Severn, Sales Trading and Origination Manager here at Brook Green, so covering all the client flow coming into the desk on our flex contracts, and also in charge of the origination desk, so procuring all our renewable volumes for our own client book, but also to sleeve into our clients. So today I'm going to cover through a few points for you. So gas storage we're going to kick off with, then on to Norwegian maintenance, talk a bit about the UK temps, and then looking at the LNG dynamics. In terms of gas storage, looking at the builds and kind of the summer. So next, Wes. So we saw the gas storage build well over the summer 25 period, consistently beating the 5-year average build rates. So whilst this year does look below the 5-year average overall, the actual build rates coming through have been very good. That has eased off in the last couple of months, certainly with the weather changing, but we're still kind of on track for where the targets were set. These build rates have been supported by LNG arrivals into Europe and lower year-on-year gas demand through Q2 25 and July 25. Storage targets were dropped from 90% at 1st of Nov to 83%, and these have been reached between OC to DEC and not maintained. So with the goalposts moving, storage targets were met in mid-October collectively, although some individual sites will not meet their targets. We are seeing that the cooler temperatures across mid-October have seen withdrawals start rather, but which is quite early and means that original forecast of the 85 to 90% will not be reachable. Norwegian maintenance. We have seen the peak maintenance in 2025 being lower than 2024. This has allowed the continual build of the gas storage through October period. These were relatively minimal market impacts, with return to working order happening largely on schedule. You can see that through the graph there. 2026 maintenance looks to be much lower than both 24 and 25, which were on the high end. This is mainly due to the historical range, but also after COVID-19 and the energy crisis saw delays to the normal maintenance schedule. We believe that this will help alleviate the winter 26 pricing by providing a clearer path to filling storages across summer 26, although with all of this, this is changeable. UK temps, we've seen the mid-range temperatures swinging from cooler to longer to at or above the seasonal norm through November. This has been limiting the pricing upside. We are seeing week on week as this is changing that the kind of expected temps are dropping lower, but very much we will be seeing kind of changes through the period of time as kind of weather events happen. The average temp should mean that the gas storage aren't drawn on as hard, but this can be maintained for the potential risk of cooler temps in Q1 26 being seen in long range forecasts. The existing winter 25 with high gas storage should lead to lower pricing through summer 26 and winter 26. But as I said, this is kind of revised weekly, so we'll keep an eye on this one. Onto LNG dynamics. We're seeing it's easy to see that the competition between these two regions for liquid molecules in the chart. The European LNG imports have been far stronger year on year across summer 25, as European netbacks maintained enough of a premium following the sink from growing LNG exports from the US. Northeast Asian imports have been generally lower year on year, especially over Q2 25. This did help to get the injection season off to a good start and kind of set the bearish tone for the gas markets moving forward. Further on the pricing, we've seen the premium JKM to TTF not being as significant enough to see the mass redirection of spot LNG from Europe to Asia. Across the end of Q1 26 to the start of the Q2, TTF is the premium product, indicating another strong start to injection season, which could see that risk premium sold in a similar way to that we saw in summer 25. The 19th EU sanction, yes, 19th, package bans the import of Russian LNG to the EU, which could lock in the Russian exports to Asia. This does mean that the US LNG is forced into EU, which could end up being the bearish tone for the JKM TTF. I think to note, as a lot of these sanctions coming in, a lot of it will be whether they are kind of adhered to. We've certainly seen a lot of rule breaks on that, so we probably will expect more to come in, certainly if nothing kind of is solved in the region. In terms of the pipeline, we're seeing the build out of the LNG liquefaction hitting the market in the next 2 years as eye-wateringly big. The 26 capacity additions are led largely by the Qatari expansions, although we do see that the US build out will continue and pick up further steam in 2027. Again, with all of this, these numbers can be revised higher or lower. We see the already fairly tight LNG balance. There's pressure on significant supply additions, which is causing the backwardation. And on the back of that, the MVP and TTF forward curves. There is a question to ask if it is backwardated enough and whether the winter 26 season is going to hold a large risk premium until we see where the withdrawal season ends. Factors looking forward, there's quite a number of points on here, so there's 2 slides to cover this. So this is from winter 25 and beyond. Temperatures will play a huge part. Temperatures are potentially be colder in Q1 26, and if this does materialize, we will see the large withdrawals and a longer path to acceptable storage levels for winter 26. As with all of this, it's forever changing, as are the targets of the kind of storage levels. TTF needs to maintain its premium to the Northeast Asia to continue attracting the spot LNG. Tightness in the Asian market could see the stronger bids for the spot volumes, and TTF will need to react accordingly to secure the molecules. Kind of views will be on the build out of the LNG liquefaction, being highly significant, being circa 3.5 times the UK total demand by 2030. Although again, we will potentially see delays to construction, which could see the backwardation challenge. The UK nuke fleet saw some extensions to lifetime through to March 28. So if they can hold on to that, and that's going to be a big if, that will mean more non-renewable supply on the grid. This will lead to increased stability and selling pressure to the back end. The probable linking of the EU-UK carbon market should mean that the UK's will see the renewed strength as it becomes pegged to the EU price. That is currently circa £10 per megawatt hour higher than the UK's. Again, the goalposts and the information coming through on that is ever changing. And finally, on the governmental uncertainty, again, regardless of who is in power, I think there's going to be a continued tailwind risk overall on the energy spend. It's unclear as to what will happen to renewable energy policy should Labour be unable to maintain their leadership. I personally think we will see changes on that pre-election, certainly as the kind of population decide where their kind of views are going to be in terms of how to elect a new government. I'll pass you on to Harry Hailwood, who will take you on to the next slides.
Thanks, John, and morning all. I am Harry Hailwood, and I head up the Policy and Regs team here at Brook Green. You're going to have me for both the regulatory and the non-commodity sections this time round. And first off, we're going to start with a non-commodity update. So the general trend over the past couple of years and forecast over the next few as well is that non-commodity costs are going to grow in both cost and importance to customers. During the energy crisis, the commodity costs took precedence. Although they still remain higher than pre-crisis levels, they have leveled out somewhat. Whereas non-commodity costs have grown in both cost and number of scheme, which I'm going to talk about a bit in today's webinar. As mentioned, we're currently seeing increases in the non-commodity cost stack, and part of that is due to the expected jump into NUOS residual charges from the new RIIO-3 price controls. Likewise, we're going to see the start of the Nuclear RAB, which is the new non-commodity cost that is set to start imminently. On RAB and RIIO, I'll go into a bit more detail on them on the next few slides. We also forecasted an increase in the capacity market charges, with previous high auction price outturns now impacting the coming CM windows. And then on BSUOS, we have seen significant increases over recent years as more intermittent renewable generation has come into the system and less baseload generation. Again, I'll touch a bit more on that on a later slide. So first off, a bit more detail on RIIO-3. So RIIO is the term used for the price controls set by Ofgem for the gas and electricity networks. It's Ofgem's framework to ensure that companies operating gas and electricity networks have sufficient revenue to run and invest in networks that efficiently deliver for customers. The RIIO-2 framework is nearing its conclusion, and we'll see the start of the RIIO-3 framework from April 2026. I think really what's important to remember here is that this is the first price controls set since the government's Clean Power 2030 targets were announced, and that is largely why you're going to see this big jump in investment required to build out the electricity transmission network. Again, another important thing to remember is that RIIO-3 is still in draft and won't be finalised until December this year, so December 2025. The major impact that we are anticipating is a significant increase into NUOS from April 26 though. So at the moment, those forecasts are in the region of around 100% increase in April 2026, followed by around 15% increases year on year out to the end of the price controls in 2031. Something else to note on this is that these price controls don't actually cover electricity distribution networks. They're dealt with separately, so it's likely we could see something similar with increases in DUOS once the RIIO ED3 price controls come into effect in April 2028. Moving on to the RAB. So this is the funding model being used for nuclear site Sizewell C. The RAB stands for Regulated Asset Base and is very similar to a CFD, with a major difference being that it is used during the construction phase of the project as opposed to just when the site is operational. Currently, there's no generation at sites that's still being built, and that isn't expected to change until the mid-2030s at the earliest. So the latest information on RAB is that it's going to be charged at £3.54 a megawatt hour and is set to start from the 1st of December 2025. But we are informed that that could actually change. Obviously, we want to keep customers as informed on this as possible, so we'll be sending out comms as soon as we know more on that. Collection on the RAB has already been delayed by a month, which has pushed the interim levy rate up, because the amount being recovered for the first scheme year still remains the same, but it's just being recovered over a shorter period. So again, if we see further delays, the ILR will actually push further up. One other thing to note on this, just on the slide, if you are an EII customer or energy intensive industries customer, you will receive an exemption on this charge at your agreed exemption rate. Just a bit more on RAB. We've got the current forecast for RAB out to Q4 2026 here. So as mentioned, the ILR, this shows the ILR. So this forms the main charge component of the Nuclear RAB, and it's called interim as it's set in advance for the period, but it will be reconciled, obviously, depending on the contract you're on with either ourselves or your supplier. You may see this reconciliation depending on that contract type. But yeah, this graph shows the forecasted ILR increasing in the summer months as forecasted eligible demand decreases, and then you see the ILR drop down again in the winter as the forecasted demand increases. So overall, we anticipate this charge will remain relatively stable over the next couple of years and average out at around £4 a megawatt hour over the year. Just slide here on BSUOS, a bit of background on BSUOS. In 2023, we saw BSUOS shift to fixed annual tariffs, but set as two separate tariffs. So you get it all in one go, but in two different tariffs. You get a summer tariff from April to September, and a winter tariff from October to March. We've recently transitioned from Tariff 5, which was the summer 2025 tariff, into Tariff 6, which is the winter 25-26 tariff, with BSUOS costs increasing by 46%. We've also recently seen the draft tariffs for April 26 to March 27. Essentially, what you're seeing is a slight lowering of the April to September tariff, which is tariff 7, and a slight increase in the October to March tariff, which is tariff 8. So the current forecasts are for tariff 7 is at £14.21 a megawatt hour, and tariff 8 is at £11.93 a megawatt hour. These are still in draft, so obviously subject to change until the final tariffs are published this December. We are generally seeing that these NESO tariffs are becoming more accurate, which is great. And generally, it's averaging out the cost over the year across the two tariffs at about £13 a megawatt hour over the year. So moving on to policy and regs. So industrial strategy, first up, in June, the government published its industrial strategy with a significant focus on energy. We've pulled out 4 key aspects on the next slide, looking at the most relevant areas to business energy customers. So I'm actually going to cover off the final couple first, and then we'll go back to the first 2 on more detail in the next couple of slides. So CPPAs, or corporate power purchase agreements, are long-term energy contracts, typically between 10 and 15 years in length, between a corporate electricity consumer and either a generator or a developer of power. They have gained traction among large corporates aiming for net zero goals, as they provide direct routes to market for renewable generation. In the UK, CPPAs are emerging as a means for consumers to secure more predictable long-term electricity prices as well. So in the industrial strategy, the government announced plans to launch a call for evidence on the market, see how it could be strengthened and expanded. There are quite a few barriers that exist at the moment within that market. So the call for evidence represents an opportunity for stakeholders to highlight some of these issues and try and improve the market. So there is issues around sort of credit requirements, volume thresholds, and contract complexity, which do act as a barrier to entry. And next one, connection reform. So within the industrial strategy, they launched a connection accelerator service for grid connections for demand projects, which goes alongside NESO's wider TMO4 reforms. The grid connection accelerator service aims to support demand projects connecting to the grid, essentially jump the queue, and is set to be launched before the end of the year. The current position is that, or the current view from government is that it will be based, qualification for this will be based on new connections that can guarantee high quality jobs and bring the greatest economic value to the country. So that should be published before the end of the year, so fairly imminently. So I've got a slide specifically on the proposed increase in the network charging compensation scheme. But just a bit more background to this, the government has regularly acknowledged that high industrial energy prices present a barrier to UK industry competing internationally. So in 2017, this led to the energy intensive industries regime being set up, which provides exemptions from non-commodity costs for around 500 of the most energy intensive industries. Previous Conservative government built on this via the EI exemption regime via the British Industrial Supercharger, which in 2024 added a capacity market exemption for EIIs to go alongside the already established exemptions on RO, FIT and CFD. The British Industrial Supercharger also introduced what's called the Network Charging Compensation Scheme, which offers an exemption from network charges of 60% from EIIs for EIIs. EIIs initially pay these network charges before being compensated a year later by what's called the EII support levy, which is funded by all non-EII customers and started earlier this year. So in the industrial strategy, the government announced its intention to increase the level of this compensation from the 60% that it's currently at to 90% from April 2026. This is just being consulted on at the moment, so it hasn't been agreed, but I think it will happen, and ultimately that is going to be paid for by an increase in the EII support levy for all non-EII customers. Final one on the industrial strategy, and in my opinion, the most significant proposal for the non-dom sector within that strategy. So that is the British Industrial Competitiveness Scheme. It's a proposal for a new exemption scheme similar to that EII scheme that I just mentioned, but it's going to cover many more businesses. So the EII scheme currently has around 500 eligible businesses, whereas this new scheme could have 7,000. That's the current proposal, but we are hearing rumours that could be even higher, and as high as 15,000 businesses qualifying for these exemptions. set to be consulted on before the end of 2025 and due to come into effect in 2027. Not sure exactly when in 2027, but just based on the way that many of the non-commodity scheme years run, it could be April. So our current understanding of the proposals, again, there's not much detail at the moment, but our current understanding is that businesses will receive exemptions on the RO, FIT and capacity market charges. The percentage level, again, hasn't been stated, but say if it is 100% exemption from these non-commodity costs, it would average out at around 50% of a business's electricity non-commodity cost, or around 25% of their overall bill. So pretty significant numbers. The major difference between this new scheme and the EII scheme is that qualifying businesses wouldn't get the CFD exemption. And then the one we're not currently sure about is whether they would receive network charges. So that 60% at the moment going to 90% that EIIs get, we're not sure. We're hearing sort of mixed things on that at the moment. But yeah, in terms of who will be eligible, as mentioned, the expectation is somewhere between 7,000 and 15,000 businesses may qualify, and eligibility is going to form a key part of this consultation process, which is due imminently before the end of the year. IS8 sectors, IS8 sectors, which I mentioned at the top here, they're mentioned regularly throughout the industrial strategy, and these are potentially the areas that are going to be targeted by this new exemption scheme, but that certainly isn't set in stone. I think irrespective of if your business does qualify, it's still going to be relevant because ultimately these schemes will be paid for by all non-qualifying businesses. I think there's sort of legitimate questions about whether this is the right policy lever to use, with other options like non-commodity rebalancing, which is this theory behind moving some of your non-commodity stack on the electricity bills over to the gas bills, or moving some of them into central taxation. They do exist as potential policy levers. Energy Minister Michael Shanks recently said at the Labour Party conference that the government is conducting a huge review of every single penny on bills at the moment to look at where potentially they could be moved elsewhere. So I think it's definitely like a hot topic within government, and because of the materiality to businesses, it's something you should all be aware of. Moving on now. So last week, DESNZ published their response to last year's TPI regulation consultation. TPI regulation has been talked about for many, many years now, and it's a move that our business supports, and I know many TPIs do as well. I'm going to share some key details here, but I'd encourage any TPIs and customers on the call to have a read of the actual response as well. So Ofgem have been chosen as the regulator for TPIs. DESNZ said that the FCA were strongly considered, but ultimately Ofgem were chosen due to their experience within the sector. A key issue around timing still remains. So DESNZ just said when parliamentary time allows, it'll happen. We would have been keen for a bit more concrete timelines here, but that wasn't said within the response. Ofgem are going to create principles, set specific rules, and require TPIs to pass a registration process. So this registration process is actually quite different to what was initially proposed by DESNZ in their original consultation, where there wasn't going to be any sort of registration process. So that is quite a big difference from the proposal or the original consultation to what they've decided now. Ofgem will have the power to fine TPIs, exclude TPIs from the market, and importantly, they'll be able to take actions against senior individuals working within TPIs. The hope is there that this should stop the practice of the same individuals causing issues and then reappearing under a new name or a new company name. There will be a sunrise period for TPIs to register, after which it will become illegal to be a TPI without Ofgem authorization. And that sunrise period is expected to be somewhere between 12 and 18 months. And the cost of regulation will be recovered from the TPI market itself, which is a similar sort of principle to how supplier regulation works. Then final slide from me. So market-wide half-hourly settlement, or MHHS, just some milestones here. So we've had the M8 and M10 milestones in September, which is when the core industry systems of the central switching service, the data integration platform, and Elexon settlement went live, enabling MPAN migrations. We've also had M11 earlier this month, so not too long ago, about 8 days ago, which is when the first supplier migrations began. And then the next few milestones are a look ahead. So we have M14 in October 2026, which is the point at which suppliers must be able to access MPANs under the MHHS, new MHHS world. From M14 onwards, new connections are under MHHS, and reverse migrations back to legacy systems will not be permitted. Then into 2027, we have M15 and M16, which when all planned MPAN migrations will be completed and the new timetable comes into effect, with the market officially moving to the new half-hourly settlement timetable. Just on MHHS, we have got further comms as a business planned and potentially some specific webinars on this as well, so watch out for them. And I am going to hand back now to Wes for a Q&A.
Thank you very much, Harry, and thank you very much, John. Obviously, lots of change going on in the industry at the moment, as has been the case over the past 4 or 5 years. I think, yeah, both very informative pieces. If anyone has any further questions after this that they come up with, then please reach out. We'll move on to a quick Q&A. I think it is worth saying as well on this type of thing, Brook Green as a business, and I guess part of the reason we were born as a business is that we feel like we can add real value on the risk management side just by talking to customers and helping them understand the market, the complexities that's going on, some of the changes, where there's optimization opportunities, whether that's in procurement or the type of contract they're on. So yeah, we're happy to support anyone on this call, whether a customer or a broker, or someone from industry, in all of that. So a couple of quick questions. John, just one for you. You talked through the gas storage chart, which I'm happy to bring it back up. One of the questions we've had is, what are the implications of the gas storage information on the markets?
Yeah, so twofold in terms of how it's going to, the implications in terms of moving forward this year, but also in general. I think it generally shows the outlook of how healthy that storage is. I think people sometimes forget the storage is there to be used, so the expectation is these will be run down. However, it's that safety net of how secure we will be should we have a extreme cold snap, or should there be disturbance in the supply market. So whilst we are below the kind of seasonal norm, we are still at a level which has volume, and that volume will be gone through. I think on the graph it shows that we have had a bit of a cold snap. However, as we'll see now, certainly over down in here in London, there's going to be a week or two of high temperatures. So the view of it is, it shows where we are starting that winter base. The weather will very much now determine how we move that forward. Different locations will have different capacities and different infills, but a lot of it will be about how much that is drawn down and then how soon we can actually fill that in. But I think sometimes people forget when we get down to those low levels, it's been designed to be taken out. It's then how quickly we can get that in. If we do see a situation where certain geopolitical news escalates, we may then see that tightness come in. So if we can start off at a far higher level, it gives us more of a security base. My overall view, though, is if there is some form of kind of new crisis, the storage, where it's going to be, will not really kind of take effect. There's going to be far more kind of consequences within the market. So it kind of shows where the health is. I think probably my view of it is that when they did drop those targets, people then got to that target and waited. It stopped them actually buying those volumes in at the kind of front spot prices. So that then just folds itself over. I think if we'd kept at those higher rates, people would have still continued to kind of fill up storage, paying the price. But once that was dropped down, that eased off now. And that just coincided with a kind of slight change to temperature, which we saw some withdrawals versus the infills.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Harry, just one for you, I think, on the exemption schemes you talked through. As I'll sort of echo what you said, I think for everyone on this call, it's probably going to be one of the most important bits of policy that comes into the energy supply space and for end consumers, especially business consumers, over the next 12 months. And yeah, like you said earlier on in the slides, we'll definitely keep customers up to date on that. And if customers do have any questions on that moving forward, come to us afterwards for that. Specifically, do we expect to see any exemption schemes for the educational sector at the moment?
I think, I don't know if you want to go back to that slide, because we've got those IS8 sectors that were identified within the industrial strategy. I don't think education is mentioned within that. That said, this consultation is going to be published before the end of the year, and these sectors certainly aren't sort of set in stone as it's only going to be for these. I think this consultation process is going to be largely around eligibility. So I definitely encourage yourselves, whoever's raised the question, if you're from that sector, to put a response in and give some sort of backing data and evidence as to why the education sector should be getting some of these exemptions. we'll be happy to share that consultation round once it's published.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks. One of the questions we did have was around SBTI and whether Scope 1 reductions via using essentially biogas and people buying RGGOs will help, I guess, reduce carbon emissions on the Scope 1 side. We have seen a number of changes and a number of reviews going on recently in this space. On the Scope 2 side, we expect there's a vote in December on a review of the greenhouse gas protocol and how Scope 2 emissions are regulated and assessed. So that's definitely something for everyone all businesses on this call to keep an eye on. On the Scope 1 side, there's less clear at the moment. We'll continue monitoring that on changes. I think it's something both in GB markets and across Europe, people are assessing how they view renewable gas, whether it is essentially a lever that can be used to reduce emissions or not, reported emissions anyway, sorry. So yes, we'll keep an eye on that and we'll feed back to everyone once we've got a bit more clarity on our side, but no major updates on us from us on that. I guess, Harry, we've had another couple of questions on, or kind of on the slide I'm sharing, to be honest, around aggregate industries. In terms of eligibility criteria, like you said earlier, we'll speak to customers when we've got more visibility on that. And I guess just to echo that from what you said earlier on, that if customers do have particular concerns about the industry they're working in, they need to be actually working with us to use us to speak to Ofgem and speak to DESNZ about that criteria, so that we can make sure that all industries are given a fair reflection. I think one of the things we've seen in supply market space over the past few years is a number of industries who haven't maybe talked to the regulator, talked to government as much as others. And, you know, just in terms of importance of the decision making and who gets this, essentially the discounts as part of the new EII scheme, that's going to be super important to most industries, obviously, because power prices in this country are very high, but it's definitely going to impact some more than others.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the only thing I'd add is if there's a consultation that a business or a TPI are going to respond to over the next months or years, I'd say this is definitely the one to get involved in yourselves. We'll be putting our own response in as a supplier, but I think it's definitely one businesses should be looking to respond to themselves as well.
Wicked. And just another point on this is around modelling of potential costs and the cost impacts for as a result of the British Industrial Competitive Scheme coming in, both as positive for the customers that are going to be part of that and essentially an increased cost, and negative to the customers that aren't going to be part of that. You know, Harry and I have done a lot of talking of industry, a lot of talking with the regulator recently around this. I think the decision making on who ends up in the pot will drastically change how that pot looks and who pays for that. It's quite a hard thing to model without concrete numbers in terms of who's going to be part of that, what businesses are going to be part of that, and actually also what volume that's going to impact. You know, there's a few industries that they could include in this where there's maybe 15, 20 businesses, but they actually consume terawatt hours of electricity a year. So we've done some high level modeling. Ultimately, this is going to be a bit more clear once the actual buckets, if you like, are clarified by the regulator.
Yeah, I think that like I said previously, the consultation on this is due before the end of the year. So when we have the next webinar, the start of next year, we'll have a lot more clarity, hopefully, and we can present that.
Yeah. There's another couple of questions on supply to EVs, Harry. So we worked quite closely with some of our existing customers and with the working groups that put this together on DCP 420. Do you want to provide a quick update on where we are with that?
Yeah, I think it's work groups can be quite slow at industry level. I think the latest was that on DCP 420, there was a collection of data from ZapMap, and that was getting presented back to the work group. But yeah, it's I think there's maybe another consultation due to go out to industry on either the 420 or the 454, but there isn't really a major update in terms of sort of progress on that, really. As I said, this has been going on, these work groups have been going on for a couple of years already, and that is the nature of this industry. Sometimes that it does get bogged down a little bit in the detail, but still hopeful that we should be able to push ahead with some of the proposals and hopefully provide some of these some relief to EV charge point operators, and again potentially drawing it back to this industrial competitiveness scheme, potentially automotive industries and EV industries, charge point operators could potentially get some of these exemptions, which would reduce the need for that separate sort of work stream under 420 and 454. So that again, I would encourage any EV companies, charge point operators to respond to this consultation as well.
Yeah, wicked. And I guess one of the other questions we've had is around eligibility and how that would be defined in terms of SIC codes. Historically, when government have put in policy over the past few years, they've often looked at SIC code definitions on companies' house to help categorize businesses. I think we'd probably agree that that'll be consistent moving forward with this as well.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Just in terms of notification of exemption, I imagine this will be something that DESNZ/Ofgem announce quite publicly. Is that what you're expecting, Harry?
Yeah, so like I said, the next steps will be a consultation process, which I think eligibility is going to form a key part of that. There's obviously also likely what's included, so that the discussion around potentially whether network charges are included. And yeah, I think that they're probably going to be the key points within that consultation. They're obviously keen for feedback from the whole industry, and then there'll be a decision probably next year from DESNZ and DBT around eligibility and what you actually are going to be exempt from.
Yeah, wicked. And just from our side, we'll obviously keep current customers up to date with that. We'll also put out communication and our views on that publicly. So yeah, people will be able to see what we see. One of the questions I think is important to answer is around existing EIIs. How do they, if they've got a partial discount already, how are they expected to change if they're included in the IS8 sector?
Yeah, I think that again, that is going to come out in this consultation process is something that I've raised as, you know, if you've got a lower than 100% exemption on your EII, you may actually then be getting a lower level percentage than this new British Industrial Competitiveness Scheme, even though the EII are still considered the sort of more energy intensive than this new scheme. So I think all those sort of more intricate details will come out in the wash over this consultation process. But I guess if you are a business that's potentially in that position, I would again definitely raise it with us as well, so we can include those kind of examples within our response. But again, as I keep saying, I would put your own response in on this as well.
Wicked. One point on the TPI regs, Harry. Do we have a comment on Ofgem becoming, I guess, the governing body to this over the FCA? I think Ofgem have done an amazing job over the past few years, and in some ways, I think publicly, you know, there's been lots of people maybe not so favourably speaking about them in other ways. So do we have a view on that internally?
I think there's somewhere around 3,000 business TPIs in the market, so it's going to be a tough task. It's difficult enough, I think, for Ofgem, or they find it difficult enough to regulate the current entities within the supply space and the generation space. So there's going to have to be upskilling and recruitment on Ofgem's side to be able to do this. I think you'd still obviously had those same issues with the FCA, potentially more so because they don't have that energy background. So it was going to be a tough thing to do, irrelevant of where this lands. I think our overall view is that this is a positive move. We didn't have too much of a strong opinion on who actually regulated it. But yeah, the view of the business is this is a good step forward, and then let's work together as an industry to actually make this successful.
Brilliant stuff. I think that's probably wrapped up a lot of our questions on the Q&A. I guess just to reinforce what we were saying earlier, energy supply has been a very strange place over the past few years with, the recovery from pandemic, then an energy crisis and a cost of living crisis. And I think in the last few weeks and months, we've seen some of the biggest changes to the non-commodity stack that we've seen in a number of years. So I guess I just implore everyone on this call to reach out to either your contacts at Brook Green if you have them already, or through the channels that we'll provide after this call to work with us. As you can tell, we quite like a chat at Brook Green, and we quite like working quite closely with people in the industry to make sure that we're helping drive positive change for both, I guess, the wider industry, our customers, the brokers we work with. So yeah, please reach out after this and yeah, get in contact. This will be sent round, the recording of this webinar will be sent round to everyone on the call. So if you want to rewatch any of it, want to share it with your team, feel free to do so. I will run a poll at the end just to provide some feedback. This is super helpful for us just to understand whether we're covering off everything you want to see and want to hear about. So please also take part in that. John, Harry, anything else from you?
All good. Thanks everyone for joining.
Yep, thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone, and have a lovely rest of your day.